my last podcast, I put on a request for questions, and I got a bunch, thank you. But I wasn't expecting this one, but I got this one from Doug. And Doug wanted me to talk about, you can see on Instagram, some of my motorcycle pictures. And he wanted me to talk about my motorcycles and particularly why I like to ride motorcycles. So this is my 2018 Suzuki Hayabusa, okay? And the Hayabusa is a bike that I've always wanted to own. We're gonna look at these bikes and then I'm actually gonna take you out on a ride on the red Honda CB1000r. But the Hayabusa was originally the first bike to break the 200 mile an hour barrier, so to speak, for production motorcycles. It dethroned the Honda Blackbird as the fastest motorcycle. And it's one of those bikes that people either love or hate. And I've always wanted to own one. And so I bought this before it's going to be discontinued in the next year or so. So I bought this, and when I buy bikes, I buy bikes that have been sitting in the dealership for a while. This one had been sitting in the dealership for 2 years. It was brand new, so I got a really good deal on it. But I changed the exhaust out, which took a huge amount of weight off. The factory exhaust is massive and really heavy, so I cut some weight off in that factory. I put a drag seat on it so I could be lower. It's actually pretty comfortable for a sport bike. And if we go over here, I put a quick shifter on it so I can run through the gears without engaging the clutch. The interesting thing about the Hayabusa is after this bike came out, the European countries kind of got together and basically said to the Japanese manufacturers that they needed to like chill out on the speed wars, or else they were gonna, like, you know, not allow them to sell their bikes in Europe. And so they put like a gentleman's agreement together where they said we won't make a bike that goes over 185 miles an hour. So they put a limiter on it, which you can override with a ECU flash, which I may or may not have done. But now it's kind of broke wide open again. There's a Honda H2, which can just absolutely, it's got a supercharger on it. It's crazy. But one of the reasons I wanted this bike is it's got the old analog dials on it, the old tack and the speedometer. It's really simple. It's one of the last ride-by cable. Everything's going to ride-by wire now. So I wanted to get this old school set up, and it's super, super reliable. It's a proven platform. The engine is absolutely bulletproof, but it's different. It's more of a sport touring bike, I would say. Of course, not as comfortable as a typical sports tourer, but it's not a daily rider. But this is kind of like an affordable Ferrari. And now we're going to move on to the bike that I'll be riding today. And I actually tried to set up like a headset with my iPhone here, because I didn't want to go out and buy a GoPro just for this, but the camera works really well on the chest mount, but the headset didn't work so well. So I'll do a voiceover on it. There's no motorcycle sounds, which really sucks. But if I do another one of these in the future, people like this and they like me talking while I'm riding, and I'll set it up so that I can get some motorcycle sounds while I'm riding. But the Honda 2015 Honda CB1000r is what we call a naked bike. And this bike had been sitting in the showroom for like 3 or 4 years when I bought it brand new. So it was an absolute steal of a bargain. So I changed the exhaust, which took about 100 pounds off the bike. The exhaust, the factory exhaust was piggish, to say the least. And if you look online, you can see the factory exhaust, and it's hideous and it sounds terrible. So this bike only sounds better now, but it's like under 400 pounds, and it's, you know, factory about 130 horsepower. So I've probably picked up a few horsepower with the changing the exhaust. So it's plenty powerful. It's a shorter wheelbase. It's got that sexy single arm swing arm like a Ducati, but it's much more reliable than a Ducati. The engine is from 2007 Fireblade, which is Honda's top at the time. Honda's top. Basically it's a CBR 1000rr, but they've taken the engine, they've tuned it for more midline power, more low range. So this bike is a ton of fun for zipping around town. You can throw it side to side, you can slam the brakes on, you can throw it around. It's a lot more fun to ride. The Boost is fun in its own way, but as far as like a daily driver and comfort wise, it is a lot more comfortable than the Busa, especially if you're going to ride longer rides. So that's the cool thing about bikes, is that, like, for example, the oil change on the Busa is going to be a little more expensive because you got to take the fairings off. But the oil change on this CB1000, the oil filter's right there. So you just pull it off and change the oil. It's done in 5 minutes. The maintenance on these things is ridiculous. The Japanese bikes are so good that way. So it's a lot of fun. Like, these tires on these bikes, I can get two, top of the line tires for the price of one tire on a sports car. The insurance is much cheaper and all that jazz. That's basically why, I ride motorcycles, and you'll see when I go out and I ride, and in the commentary, motorcycles, it's something that you have to be 100% in the moment, and you have to be constantly adjusting your traffic position. You have to always be strategic in how you ride. And so it's almost like being in a flow state, like you're playing sports. So it's a fun way to kind of feel like you're doing something competitive, because every time you go out on the road, you've got to be totally 100% in the moment. So I did this ride on Thanksgiving a couple days ago, and I really love to ride on the holidays because there's nobody on the road, but we'll link this video up with the other one, and we'll take you out on the road, and we'll talk a little bit more about, why I ride and how I got into riding and all that good stuff. So here we are on the CB1000r 2015. Please like and subscribe to this. As you see, I'm learning how to use my video editing software, which is really, really cool. I use Filmora. You can find a link below in the description if you'd like to try it out for free. But it's pretty simple. Even somebody who really sucks at technology like me can use it. So here we go. We're gonna go on a little ride that I do almost every day. I try and ride when the weather's good, just about every day. And Kentucky's pretty awesome because there's some really cool roads that are like literally 5-10 minutes out of town, super curvy country type roads, low traffic, and the people out in the country are used to seeing bikes because most of the people ride their bikes out there. So Doug asked, why do I like riding bikes? Well, my buddy Joel Jameson of 8 Weeks Out, he flies helicopters, kind of his little hobby. And I'm sure if you asked him, he would say, you have to be 100% in the moment, like I mentioned before. It's the same thing with motorcycles. Like, you have to be 100% in the moment, and it is dangerous. And that's one of the reasons I like it, is because it is dangerous. But you can mitigate that risk if you're careful about, where you ride, when you ride, and how you ride. So here we are. We're going out just outside of Lexington, and this bike is super agile. It's super nimble, and we're about to get on one of these main roads here. And obviously I got a chest mount, so I'm obviously checking to my left to make sure nobody's coming. You weren't going to see that, but so I'm turning onto the main street, and immediately, one of the biggest mistakes people make on bikes is they get locked on to one particular area of the road. You want to be scanning down the road, watching the cars. I'm watching the cars on the left, making sure like this car on the left isn't going to turn in front of me.
You know, when I go through and I see cars like that in the turn lane, I've got my finger on the horn. I'm making sure that they can see me. Like I'm looking, I'm scanning the whole road. And here I'm gonna move to my left. I'm immediately checking my mirrors to make sure that there's nobody whizzing up behind me. Because a lot of time cars won't see you. You have to ride like you're invisible. So I'm constantly looking in my mirror right now to make sure that somebody behind me isn't going to slam into me. So that's a big part of what you've got to do when you're on a bike, is you've got to be constantly scanning the road ahead. You can't get locked onto one particular object. And the thing with that as well is if you do get locked onto a particular object, you're going to steer whatever you're staring at. So if you're staring at a car that's coming at you, you're more than likely going to run into that car, and that is not a good long-term strategy, obviously. And really interesting thing is a lot of times your bike is not heavy enough to trip lights. This light lasts a long time, but there's a law in Kentucky that if you sit at a light for a particular amount of time and the light doesn't flip, as long as it's safe to proceed. A motorcycle can go through a red light. And obviously that's, you know, at the discretion of you, and also if the officer sees you, that discretion of the officer. So, you know, sitting at a light for a long time, you have the discretion to go through that red. But obviously I'm waiting here, and a lot of times you want to get the person behind you to kind of move up a little bit so they can trip the light as well. But you'll notice too, when this light does turn green, that I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna kind of look both ways and make sure that nobody is running a red, because in Lexington, people are running reds constantly. This is a horrible town for people running red lights, especially this intersection in particular. And the neat thing about driving a bike all the time is that carries over into your regular vehicle driving. Like, you know, I'm gonna carry those habits over into driving my car. So I pause, I go around the corner and getting on it just a little bit, and you can see the bike's kind of bopping up and down a little bit as I run through the gears. But this road here is really neat. It's you can see everything in front of you. When I come to these blind hills, what I'll do is I'll accelerate to the hill, and then I will come off the throttle because I can't see over top. I can't see what's going on. So you always kind of gotta, and that's the nice thing about a bike is when you come off the throttle, you can slow that bike down pretty quickly, but you just want to make sure that you don't outride your sight, so to speak. But one of the things that I want to do is, you see here, I'm kind of riding in like the wheel rut of where the cars would be. I'm either riding in like the right rut or the left rut. I try and stay out of the middle of the road. And here I'm seeing this car on the right, and I'm making sure that they see me. I've got my thumb on the horn, just in case they start to roll out. I can honk and take evasive action if I need to. But the middle of the road is where most of your junk is going to be, like your oil, your antifreeze, all that sort of stuff is going to be in the middle of the road. And so I want to stay kind of in the rut of where the tires on that car in front of me are going to be. And I'm going to maintain a nice, safe falling distance here, so I can, I have plenty of time to react and do whatever I need to do. I'm watching that car on the right, making sure they're not pulling out in front of me. Also, if you stay within a certain distance of a car, it acts as kind of a safety net, because people are going to see that car before they see you. So keeping cars around you at certain times can be an advantage to you, as long as you're somewhere where the car can hear you and see you, so they know that you're there. You don't want to get yourself beside cars where they can't see you in the blind spot, and then they just make a quick move and they don't even see you, and then they run you off the road or something like that. So I'm going to have a nice safe falling distance here. We're following along, and this road, as you can see, for whatever reason, this car has decided to get on it in a school zone, but oh well. So you can see we're already in like a, almost a rural type area, and I'm not even 5 minutes away from the gym. So that's really one of the nice things about Lexington. So scanning intersections, constantly keeping my peripheral looking and seeing what's going on. I have a light coming up here, so I'm going to start coming off the gas and start slowing down. I'm looking in my rear view mirror to make sure nobody's coming up behind me, at 100 miles an hour and going to rear end me. Probably stopped a little too close to this Camry. I should have had a little more distance, but I can still kind of scoot to the left if I need to. And then I'm gonna pause a little bit, check both ways, go around the corner, make sure no one's coming. It's too bad this car's in front of me because this little stretch here is awesome. That you can get on the throttle pretty hard. There's not a lot of, intersections here that you have to worry about people pulling out in front of you. But we're gonna go under New Circle Road. This is a Parker's Mill Road. It's a great, one of my favorite rides. This ride takes about probably 10 or 15 minutes total. We're gonna go up, we're gonna go across Man of War, behind the airport, and then come back around onto Versailles Road, and then come back Man of War. So it's a nice stretch. It's got some good straightaways where you can open it up. It's also got some twisties behind the airport where you can really kind of, get into the corners. And a day like today, you got to be careful because you can see it's overcast. We've had some rain. And there's areas, especially in the twisties that I'm going to get onto, where there's trees, and those trees can block the sun from hitting the road. So there might be some wet spots, especially down in the fall. There's a lot of leaves on the road, so you got to make sure that you're going into these corners under control, just in case there's a big patch of leaves on the road, that you don't hit those and end up sliding off the road into the ditch, which would really suck, especially with these fences and these big telephone poles. That could end up, you having a super messed up day, which would really suck. So we're coming up on an intersection here. So we're gonna come off the throttle. This is a major intersection. This is Man of War, which is kind of like one of Lexington's major kind of semi-highway, freeway type deals. I'm gonna stop. I'm looking in my mirrors right now, making sure that nobody behind me is kind of smashing into me. But this is where it kind of gets fun. This road up ahead of me here is nice. It's off the beaten path, and there's not a lot of traffic on this road, so we can kind of get on it a little bit and have fun with it. So coming up to the intersection, I'm scanning. We're gonna wait for this light to turn. You can see it's a nice day today. It's Thanksgiving, and love riding on the holidays, as I said before, because of the traffic. There's not a lot of traffic on the road. But I got right into riding bikes, when I was younger, like 10, 11, riding dirt bikes. And then when I turned 16, I took a motorcycle safety course, and then I started, riding consistently. And then when I moved to California, I had a Honda Shadow, which was my daily transportation. Excuse me. And then when I moved to Colorado, I had motorcycles. And when I went to Arizona, I had motorcycles, and pretty much drove year round. And then I took a little break when I moved to Kentucky. Then I picked it up a couple years ago, but I'm getting on it pretty good here. And you can see this is a really, really great road. There's not a lot of side roads. There's not a lot of traffic, so it's awesome. So we're gonna come up to a blind corner here. And the thing that you want to make sure is you go into this corner, you can use that front brake to adjust your speed. You don't want to slam it, but you can tap it, and you want to look where you're going. And you see that car come in there. A lot of newbie riders make a huge mistake. They see that car and they go, oh my God, and they stare right at it. And then you end up like going over the other lane. Or these trees, like they lock onto a tree or they lock onto a car. You have to be able to scan down the road and be aware of those cars, be aware of those trees, but you can't lock onto it. You want your vision to basically trace the path that you're going to take around the corner. So here I'm going to move my head to the left, slightly outside, and it's going to the bike's just going to naturally follow my head. It's a natural weight shift. Now you don't have to get into all that, sliding off your seat stuff. If I do a track day, yeah, we can slide out and put the knee down and all that stuff. But for your normal everyday riding, there's no real need for that. So we're coming up here. Obviously, when I go over these kind of blind hills, I'm coming off the throttle, making sure there's nothing, over the hill that I'm going to run into, animals on the road, gravel on the road. This is an awesome straight stretch here back by the airport. We can really kind of get on it a little bit, and it's a nice straight. Once we get over this little hump here, we've got a nice long corner where we can really, lean into it a little bit and come onto the throttle right about here, hard on the throttle right here, And then we have this nice little corner turn, and I've rode this road, you know, every day for probably the last year and a half, 2 years. So I know it really well. So I've got this nice corner, and then I'm automatically shifting my weight over to the other side to get back to the left. And getting on the throttle here, and then we got this sharp little chicane turn here, which is really cool. And once again, I'm coming off the throttle, using a little brake, turning, and then I'm accelerating, and then there's a car right there. So that's where you got to be disciplined and not stare at that car. I know you want to stare at the car, but you can't. You stare at that car, you're going to end up in the car, and that's not a good long-term strategy for you. And so we're rolling down this road. I'm looking constantly down the road. I'm looking to see if there's leaves, debris, pine cones, all that kind of stuff. I've got this nice sweeping turn coming up here, so I'm coming off the throttle a little bit. I don't think I really needed to brake at all because I have my speed right, and then I can hit it hard through here. You can see the bike jump a little bit as I go through the gears. A lot of power. I can head up this hill, get on the throttle, and then come off a little bit to make sure that I can do what I need to do coming over this hill. There's a lot of bicycle riders that go down these roads, so you got to be really careful because cars will come out into your lane if there's a bicycle rider. So you've just got to constantly you know, be smart about when you use the throttle, when you use the brakes. So we got a stop sign coming up here, and you know, we're going to come to a complete stop. You know, I'm going to look both ways, even though you can't see that because I have a, you know, the camera's mounted on a chest mount. So I'm looking both ways. Nobody's coming, and we're going into these little corners here, and it's a really nice corner. Can't be too aggressive on this corner because there is a stop sign coming up, but I know these roads, so I kind of know where I can get on it and where I need to be conservative. And there's certain spots here where there tend to be gravel, there tends to be debris. There's a lot of farms here with a lot of truck traffic, so I just kind of know where I can, you know, pick and choose my battles, so to speak. And you know, I drive, you know, I'm not stupid aggressive, but I drive at least the speed limit and maybe a little more. And you'll see coming up here when we get back into town, people are crazy, you know, like I'm going the speed limit, maybe a little more, and people are passing me like I'm standing still. It's crazy. And so, you know, that's the one thing you got to mitigate is you got to mitigate for other people on the road. You know, most of the time when you get into trouble, it's because you didn't make a good decision. But sometimes you can't control what other people do, as you'll see later on in the video. So I'm looking through the corner. Now, this is the fun part about bikes. You know, for me, it's not riding at like high speeds. For me, it's getting to that speed, staying there for a second, and then, you know, because I'm going to get on it here and I'm hammering it, and you can see, you know, I'm getting up to speed really quickly. Like I can get from, you know, doing 15 miles an hour to being at or more than the speed limit very, very quickly. So, you know, one of the nice things about this bike, it's a nice, and I'm looking at this car here, making sure this car, I've got my thumb on the horn, making sure this car isn't going to come right out in front of me. But one of the nice things and the bad thing about this bike, it's super comfortable, but it has no windscreen. That's kind of by design for me. I do this, mostly ride this bike in town, these shorter rides like this. So you know exactly how fast you're going. It feels, when you're doing, you know, speed limit plus, you feel it, you know, when you're on roads like this where the speed limit's a little higher, because you're getting that full blast of wind. And the Busa, it's great because you get some wind protection, but at the same time, you can be going really, really fast and not realize it because you do have that wind protection. So on this bike, it's a lot harder to get in a lot of trouble as far as high speed is concerned, whereas the Busa, you got to be really careful because you can be rolling and it doesn't feel like it because you don't have that wind blast. You know, it's designed to protect you from the wind at super high speeds, especially if you're ducked down low onto the tank. So this is Versailles Road, and we're coming back into town, and we're coming by the airport. We went down the back side of the airport, so this is the front side. We got Keeneland on our left here, and this is a nice little stretch. And you know, I'm keeping with the flow of traffic, and the flow of traffic is usually significantly higher than the speed limit. And then I pick my spots where I can, you know, once again, you know, accelerate hard. So we're coming up on Man of War, and we're gonna make a right turn. So I'm constantly scanning. I'm looking in my mirrors. I'm checking to make sure nobody's falling like super close behind me, and I have a safe falling distance. I want to make sure that I've got plenty of room and plenty of options of places to go. This car, I'm going to keep it right there because I don't want to get up beside it, because you get to these intersections, that car might decide at the last second that it's going to come over. So I want to get away from it as soon as I can. And so I've got myself in the turning lane here, but I'm watching these vehicles in front of me, because a lot of times at the last second they'll be like, oh, I want to turn down Man of War, and then they just glance, or they don't even look at all, and they go over. So I'm keeping that aware. And I'm gonna, pull up to this red, and I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna take a good look, and then I'm gonna get around the corner here. And I get on this throttle pretty hard here, and you're gonna see somebody coming up here. It's pretty interesting. I'm moving pretty good, and this guy comes flying up beside me. And this is the kind of guy that we're gonna zoom in here. Look at this jackass. He flies up beside me, and then he tries to split the middle between the two cars, and then he's swerving back and forth. And these are the kind of jackasses you got to watch out for when you're riding a bike. And this joker, hangs around trying to get me to race him. And I'm not going to say that I don't ever do things like that, but in this situation, with as much traffic as there is around, it just dumb, just stupid. But this guy, he hangs around, and you'll see later on in the video, he hangs around trying to get me to race him, and then he just takes off. But, I want to keep this guy in front of me so I can see what's going on. I definitely don't want him behind me, or beside me, because who knows what the hell he's going to do. So we zoom back out here, and you can see he's way out. I'm going to keep my distance from him. I don't want to have anything to do with him. So we're rolling through these intersections. I'm scanning for cars that are getting in that lane to turn. I know which lights have flashing yellows, which ones have reds, but you still have to treat all those intersections with care. I try and get through those intersections as quickly as I can. I don't ever want to spend any time in an intersection, because that's worth it. Bad things happen usually. So I'm scanning. I mean, this is really nice because you can, this is a good place you can get on the throttle a little bit, have fun. Do some accelerating. I'm watching this car that's pulling out in front of me, what's going to happen. And I believe this light's turning red, so I'm moving over to the left lane. I'm looking in my mirrors to make sure nobody's coming up behind me that's going to hit me from behind. There's nothing worse than getting rear-ended on a motorcycle. So here's my little buddy up here in his Lexus. And I'm kind of keeping my distance because, this guy's a joker. And see, he moves over, and he's wanting me to come up beside him and race him. And I just kind of sit here, and I'm like, because I want to make sure that Subaru isn't right next to me. And you'll watch, he's waiting for me to get on it. And with all these intersections up in front of me, it's just not worth it. But he's going to hang out for a little while, trying to get me to go, and then he's going to speed off because he's a big man and he's tough. And yeah, it's kind of crazy, but he's hanging out, and I'm just kind of hanging here. And we're coming up on a school zone here, so that's another reason why I'm not going to get into any kind of chicanery. But you can see he takes off, thinking that I'm going to race with him. And good luck to you. And I'm doing well over the speed limit, so he's considerably, maybe even double the speed limit here, at least maybe triple. So he zooms off, and I'm totally cool with keeping him there. And you can see I'm riding in the rut. That's another thing too. When you ride in the and you can see this Subaru, I'm doing well over the speed limit, and this Subaru goes blowing by me because Subaru wants to get in the left lane. But if I'm in this kind of like rut, people can see me, have a better chance of seeing me in their rearview mirror. And if I can see their face in the side mirror, then the chances of them seeing me are much, much higher. So I'm slowing down here. I'm checking my mirror. I'm making sure nobody's going to crash into me from behind, and I'm leaving myself some space so I can dart in between the cars just in case somebody isn't paying attention and they decide they're going to rear end me. You don't have the protection of a car, on a motorcycle. And so if you get rear-ended on a bike, it's not a good thing. That's happened to me before. Luckily I was able to come out, with no significant damage. I went up on the hood of a truck. But it's not a fun experience. So you want to make sure that you're constantly being hyper vigilant, hyper aware of, where cars are beside you, where they are in front of you. You know, I'm keeping a distance. I'm either going to stay right here or I'm going to zoom by this car. So I'm going to get on the throttle because I don't want that vehicle beside me. This is a good following distance for me. And I've got nothing beside me. I'm going to be making a left turn here soon. So I'm going to get by this vehicle as quick as I can. You see I get on the throttle a little bit because I don't want to be in that no man's zone where it's a blind spot, where they're just going to, like, if they need to change lanes, they're going to come over and push me over the curb, which is no fun. So I'm just falling kind of behind this car, and I actually like doing this. I like staying a safe falling distance when going through situations like this where we have turning lanes in front, because people are going to see that. They're going to see that car, you know. So I like to go through intersections a lot of times with a pack of vehicles, as long as I'm not boxed in, so I can, you know, maneuver as necessary. So that's the fun part about all this, is it's a constant chess match. You know, when you're riding, it's probabilities, it's reducing risk. You know, once again, I'm checking my mirrors to make sure nobody behind me is going to ram into me, and I'm also stopping, and see, I leave myself a little path so I can get out of the way quickly. And you know, that's your biggest attribute, is your quickness and your agility. And you'll notice here I am going to be we get off into these residential areas. This is Clays Mill Road, which is kind of a dangerous road. There's a lot of blind corners, so you have to kind of be conservative. But I'm going to get off on these side roads, and I'm going to practice, you know, evasive maneuvers. I'm going to pick, like, potholes on the road, or not potholes, or manhole covers, or little things on the road that I'm going to quickly evade. Or there's a couple times I'm going to actually practice hard braking. And a lot of people on bikes don't do enough of that. They don't practice hard braking or hard turning, so that if they do get themselves in a sticky situation, they know what the bike feels like, you know, when it stops hard. You know, the Busa, I'll take it out somewhere, like a parking lot, big parking lot, when it's empty, and I'll get on it hard, and then I'll decelerate really hard. So I know what the bike is going to do under hard braking. A lot of people don't practice that kind of stuff, and that's something you need to do on a regular basis. One of the mistakes that people make too with braking is they're too aggressive on the brakes. So you've got to be patient. You want to engage the brake just enough so the front end kind of loads, and then you pull the brake hard. A lot of people will just pull that brake hard, and you increase the probability of the bike coming out from under you. These Japanese bikes, especially this Honda, I mean, you could slam the brake on hard and get up on the front wheel. Like, a lot of people will do that trick-wise pretty easily. These bikes are so well balanced. But if you've got a big heavy cruiser or something along those lines, it's pretty easy to dump the bike if you're too aggressive on the brakes. So you want to be patient. You want to squeeze the brakes, not jam the brakes on. So a lot of it is just technique and knowing your bike and knowing the bike suspension. So we got a nice following distance here. We've got some really dangerous blind corners coming up here, so I'm being nice and conservative, because I want to live to ride another day. So you'll see, like, blind corner ahead. So we're looking through the corner. We're constantly scanning. You know, I like this distance. I've got this car in front of me who's kind of acting as a buffer for me, for other vehicles, so that I can kind of, you know, people see that there's a car, and then, you know, they're more than likely to see me as well as if I've got this car in front of me coming along. You got to watch it when you're by yourself and coming up these roads. It's very easy for people to glance and they don't see you at all because they're not looking for you. And I always ride with my high beam on, which increases the probability of people seeing me. I've got some high vis stickers on my helmet that kind of reflect light, that kind of helps as well. So that's something that's helpful. And so we're coming up here. Yeah, this person decided to turn with no signal. That's nice of them. That's why you got to have a nice, safe following distance so you can, you know, make the adjustments you need. And we're coming through this intersection. I'm scanning, making sure there's nobody turning left in front of me. We've kind of got a school zone going here, so we're being conservative. Definitely don't want to get a ticket in a school zone. That would be not good. And then we're coming up on a major intersection here on Clays Mill. We're back behind the mall, and we're heading down the backside. So, and then we're going to make a turn, and we're going to go up through residential area where we can practice our evasive maneuvers like we talked about before. And that's something I do, you know, all the time. And I'm going to come down the right side here I'm looking in my mirrors. I'm making sure nobody's coming up behind me at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I'm gonna stop and checking my mirrors all the time. A lot of times these lights I'll leave in gear. If a car pulls up and stops behind me, I might put it in neutral to give my hands a rest. But most of the time when I'm sitting here like this, I've got it in gear and I'm ready to scoot out of the way if I need to. But it's this is one of my favorite times to ride is in the fall and the winter in Kentucky. There's not very many days that I can't get out and ride. The weather for the most part, unless there's snow on the ground, I can ride if I want to. A lot of times, it's too wet, but I've got a lot of winter gear, and I actually like riding in the winter and the fall better because I can wear all my gear comfortably. Whereas in the summertime, it can get a little sticky and a little sweaty, especially when you're at intersections. So we're getting on it a little bit here. This is a nice stretch to kind of get on it, and I got to be careful. This intersection right here, it tends to be a lot of gravel, so I'm scanning ahead. I'm looking ahead to see if there's any debris. It looks pretty clean, so I can get into the lean a little bit. And we're gonna head back here, and we're gonna do some practice. We're gonna do some like emergency maneuver stuff. We're gonna do some hard braking in this residential neighborhood, making sure there's nobody around me, and that way I'm practicing just in case I have to avoid something on the road. Like I've had ladders fly off trucks. I've had to make some pretty evasive maneuvers at high speeds. Stuff happens, retreads coming off trucks. That's always fun. But you're gonna see, I'm gonna pick some spots on the road here, like a manhole cover or like little spots, and then I'm gonna practice like dipping in and out. Avoiding things, evading things. So, yep, here we go. And see, I avoided that manhole cover, and then we're heading home. And a couple times here, I'm gonna slam the brakes on, just like I did there. And I'm gonna, practice that evasive maneuver, evasive braking, just so that if I ever get into a situation where I have to, you can see I'm bopping side to side. I'm coming up on a four-way stop here. So here we go, we're in a four-way stop. And these residential areas are actually pretty fun because you can, being, conservative, you don't want to be stupid about it because, the last thing you want is to go wheeling through these neighborhoods, and especially if you're doing it on a daily basis and one of the residents calls and says, hey, we got this guy that comes wailing through our residence at such and such a time. You need to come out here, and the police come out. So, you want to be courteous, and you don't want to go rolling through here too fast because there are kids and stuff like that, and the noise factor. So, it's fun to go around these corners, but I'm not stupid about it. You don't want to be dumb about it. So we're coming up to the end here. I appreciate you tuning in. It was fun to basically get this question, and I think I have a bunch of other questions I'll be answering too. But thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out the links below. I've got a little bit of something for everybody. I've got a link to this Filmora video editor if you need to do that. I've got a YouTube tool that helps optimize your videos. I've got coaching resources. I've got all sorts of stuff at Amazon store that you can check out. So please, help support the channel. I would much appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, I would appreciate it as well. It doesn't necessarily have to do with fitness or health. This was kind of cool, and if this turns out to get a lot of likes and questions and further discussion, I wouldn't mind doing one of these every once in a while, and then figuring out how we can get some exhaust sounds in here too, because that would make it definitely a lot better. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.